Hi there, it's Grace Krivinger, host of the Art of What's Next podcast. And every month for almost a decade now, I have been meeting my spiritual and creative life mentor, Malcolm Campbell, at a local coffee shop where we go really deep on our lives, our purpose, what it means to love ourselves, what it means to love others, and what inspires us to be the best we can be. At 84 years young, I've learned so much from my dear friend Malcolm that I've been really eager to share our conversation with all of you. Malcolm is a master practitioner and trainer of neuro-linguistic programming and an ordained minister. He's a former U.S. Marine, and he co-created the first alternative AIDS clinic in 1990 in Dallas, Texas. And he was the Unity Minister for the Federal Corrections Institute in Fort Worth. He's worked with everyone from leaders of industry to entrepreneurs to incarcerated felons to couples to individuals with life-threatening illnesses and people facing end-of-life transitions. But to me, he's my dear friend that I can be honest with, and I know that he'll always be honest with me. He's been my guide and my mentor for so many challenging times, and even guided my sister Maggie in the end of her young life as she was grappling with the deepest philosophies of life and death during her battle with terminal cancer. Malcolm is my confidant and my coach. He's one of my very best friends, and I'm so honored to welcome Malcolm Campbell to our show today. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today.
This is something I've looked forward to for a while.
Me too. Me too. So today I'm here with my very dear friend and mentor, Malcolm Campbell, and we meet for coffee every month and have the most delightful conversations that have just been beautiful, both teaching moments for me and sharing and friendship and trust. And what I was excited to do today is to be able to share, almost as if we're having coffee together, to share our conversations and kind of our beliefs around life and happiness and trust and creativity and all the things.
The stuff that matters.
The stuff that matters.
Yeah.
Exactly. And Malcolm is, he has, he's reminds me that he's 84 years young. So you've got a lot of perspective and wisdom. But one of the things that I think we have most in common is that we both love what we do.
Yeah, indeed.
We love what we do.
I think that's very strong. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think for me, what I find so much joy in talking to you about is just that I know that where your love for your work comes in is from helping people. And so let's talk a little bit about kind of when people come to you when they need help. I know when I came to you and I needed help, I had just lost my mom and I felt really confused and lost, and I was looking for clarity. I hadn't yet started the Hivery, so I wasn't, or I had actually. No, I had.
Yeah, it was just early days. Beginning. Yeah.
And I would think I was just in that mode of kind of finding my vitality and my creativity, and you were such a great support. So tell me what it's like when people come to you and they feel like, when do they come to you? When they feel stuck, when they feel unclear?
Yeah, stuck, unclear. Usually there's something bigger and more negative than just feeling stuck.
Yeah.
Usually not only they feel stuck, but there's something wrong with that. There's some failure within that's causing me to be stuck. Yeah. Rather than I'm just stuck. And so that's kind of thing that is, more common than not, I think. And that's a great place to start. It's a great place because most of us have grown up with a lot of stuff that doesn't work for us. And when one of them breaks loose like that and becomes sort of rogue and we can focus on it, it's usually helpful in creating a better inner environment altogether.
Yeah.
In the example that you just raised of yourself, it was very easy for me to do what I try to do with almost all clients, and that is to look at you and find what is in this person that I can love.
Yes.
Yes. And if I can find that, and I usually can because we all have it, then I can start feeling that for the client and reflecting it back to her or him either. And that tends to be accepted. People accept that and begin to feel, oh, I'm okay. So I may have to do some adjustment, but I'm okay. I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm feeling my real self.
I think it's such a different way of working with people. Because, and you've told me that before, that like the way that you work with people is you fall in love with them so they can fall in love with themselves.
Yes.
And I don't know anyone else who does that. I mean, I should take that back. There are others of us who do that in different ways. Maybe it's as a writer, maybe it's as a leader, but I had never experienced someone like you who was able to reflect that back to me so that I could kind of find those parts of myself that I loved and had lost sight of.
Well, just think about what a great pleasure it is for me, because I get to fall in love with somebody again.
Yeah.
And it really is. It's a joyful experience for me. As a rule, every now and then it goes differently from that, but most of the time, it's so easy to lose track of who we are. And so most of the time, I just did some time with my brother, my younger brother, who's 50 something, and he was lost. He was saying, I'm just having a hard time finding any way to love myself. Yeah. Going, hey, this guy's got a lot of road mileage under him. He's a great musician. He has lots of positive qualities, but none of those mattered to him in the moment,
Yeah.
So it's like, you have to just take a minute and try to get in touch with this incredible gift that your life is, that the universe has given you. The universe has given you life as a person on the planet today. What can that mean? What are the possibilities there for you? Find that, get in touch with that, and then tell me you're having trouble loving yourself.
Right.
That's the end of that problem.
I remember you gave me an assignment one time when we were first working together, and it stuck with me forever. Like you said, I want you the entire weekend. I think we're meeting on Friday. And you said, I want you to do what you want, what makes you feel good the entire weekend. And I pushed back and was like, that's not possible because I have to work on my taxes this weekend and I have to do, I have to clean my kitchen this weekend. And you kind of countered that with, well, if you were to work on your taxes this weekend, how would it make you feel? And I was like, well, I guess it'd be off my back. I'd feel more complete. It's like it's something that's been nagging at me. And you're like, well, it turns out that maybe it would make you feel good. Maybe you do want to work on your taxes. And it just helped me so much.
Yeah, that's a really big shift. And it's one that we all need from time to time. And that's what, when we find ourselves doing stuff out of obligation. First visit with a client for me, two things I almost always try to get across to them. One is nothing matters so much as that you feel good. That's the single most important thing in your life. That sometimes is difficult for people to take in. But the second one is even worse because the second one is, at the beginning of the day, don't do anything you don't want to do.
We rebel against that. We're like, I have to do all these things I don't want to do.
Yes. And the point of that is exactly what you were just talking about. It's beginning to shift obligation to opportunity. This is the very example that you use is a great one. I don't want to do my taxes. What a pain in the neck that is. Okay. How will you feel about it if you get them done? What will it do for you? What will be your experience of that, it being in your past? How's that feel? Oh, that feels very different. So we just shifted doing your taxes from an obligation to an opportunity to reach a place of feeling good, which is what you really want.
Right. And it's interesting because I think that we can minimize the importance. Like, even when I first heard you say that, I thought like, nothing matters so much as we feel good, but that feels like such a place of privilege to get to feel good. It feels like, but what I learned from you over time is that we can be like, we can find our best version of ourselves so that we can go forth and help others and make an impact on the world when we feel aligned, when we feel true, when we feel good.
It's so simple, and yet it's so easily, we're not taught this in our culture is the issue, but it would be nice if we were, because the most that you can offer the world, most that the world can benefit from grace having been in it, will not happen if you don't feel good.
Yeah.
It's really simple.
If you're trapped in misery or
yeah. And so, not only for yourself, but to the benefit of people who are all around you.
Yeah.
There's a real value in putting yourself first and going for the idea that nothing matters so much as that I feel good.
But is that a tough sell? I mean, I can imagine, I know the times that I've been struggling or kind of, feelings of darkness.
Yes.
Whether that's like inner critic stuff or external stuff like grief and losing people I love. And
sure,
it feels almost impossible to imagine. I remember so clearly after my sister died, Maggie, who you worked with as well. And I love that you knew my sister.
Marvelous Maggie.
Marvelous Maggie. Yes. I remember after she died though, I was like, I don't know how I will ever feel joy again. It felt impossible.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you work with people? I mean, to convince them, if you will, that it's possible.
Well, that the loss of someone you love is going to take you out of a place of feeling good, every time. I mean, it's just, and it's not that you can avoid life and its variety of experiences.
Right.
You are subject still to them. The issue is not whether or not you have those experiences. The issue is how do you manage yourself within them? Right. Understanding that grief is sort of nature's way of allowing you to let go of something you don't want to let go of. But over time, it helps you to get to a place where you can be reasonably free in your own space. And then it can become then something that is, rather than feeling like a horrible tearing out of your loss, it becomes later through the process of grief, through some period of time, becomes one of those really magical things in your life history that you're able to appreciate for what was there rather than the loss of what was there. So once more, it's about moving it from the negative to the positive, and grief is your natural way of doing that.
Yeah. And it's so brutal when you're going through it.
Yeah.
But I remember another thing that you taught me was that, and I remember how you said it. I remember it so clearly. You said, I'm in for all of it. Like all of life.
All right.
Will you talk about that? Because it really helped me and changed me.
It did. Well, thank you for telling me that. Because that's a tough one. It's one I work with myself. I'm 84. And my task at 84, and it has been for a while, my task given to myself is to love it all. All of it, everything every experience, everything.
Yeah.
Because that is life. Life is it's an energy of contrast with both negative and positive. And there's this awful thing to take in that has great meaning, though. That is that without the difficult experience, you can't be aware of the easy experience.
Yeah.
Without beauty. Yeah, without the ugly, you can't. There is no beauty. Without up, there's no down. All that stuff. And life is that. It's the physical reality of our lives is that it's a world of contrast. And both of those, and none of them exist without the other. No white without black. No up without down. No out without in. All that.
It really, I never forgot it because I found it so useful. And I think about it a lot during, whether they're like, we kind of have like little blips in life or like mega fissures in life, And either, in both times or in kind of both categories, I think about that because I think one of the reasons that in my experience that I've learned to love so deeply is because I have lost people.
Indeed. I know that about you.
And so it really helped me go like, oh,
yeah,
I'm in for all of it.
Yeah.
And that's the richness and the tapestry of this crazy life and beautiful life.
Yes, and that's what I'm trying to hang on to, and you know, I'm doing a lot of work with elderly people these days. It has become important to me to help older people deal with fear, isolation, desperation, all that stuff that shows up for so many of us who are in our later years. And it's all really dear, it's all in that same place. It's all in that same place of acceptance. Everything that got you here is just what got you here. This is where you are. And so the big sell for me with those older clients, especially, but younger ones too, is to be in the present, just to let go of that stuff that keeps you out of the present, because that's the stuff that makes you not feel good.
Yeah. And I can imagine, and I'm curious, if that same feeling and those same kind of emotions, those show up regardless of age, right? It's just at what age are we dealing with them?
Yeah.
So it happens in our teens, in our 20s.
Yes.
This feeling of like disconnection of self and not being good enough. And
yeah, one client who was in her late 70s said she was really glad she found me. She says, because how is some guy in his late 30s or 40s going to understand anything at all about me? Yeah, well, okay, well, you probably could. That's okay. I like that you're endorsing me.
Yeah.
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 And so it's kind of like that. I'm dealing now with people whose experiences I can understand a lot better than I could have 30 years ago. So
yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about, because what I found really beautiful in over the years, and I think it's been like 10 years that we've known each other now, at least. Yeah. And we are in, regular close contact. So I feel like I've been very lucky to get to know you well.
Me too. I feel like I've been very lucky to get to know you well.
Yeah.
I love you a lot.
Oh, I love you too. I feel so lucky that you're in my life and that you're willing to have these conversations with me. And
I know they're really fun for me.
Yeah. It's funny. It's like I feel like it's almost like fuel or medicine for me when I feel if I feel like creatively out of sync, or like I'm not being true to myself or to my work or my, and I shouldn't or the things that are so important to me and how that I help people. When I feel stuck, our conversations release that for me. Like it helps me kind of get back in.
Yeah. Well, I get a great benefit out of this as well. We talk about not just your stuff, we talk about mine as well. It's not a one-way thing.
And we talk about life and and these, I get so much inspiration of things that I want to pass on, which is why I was so excited to have this conversation. Because I thought there's so many times, I just thought of another one. I remember, and I think about this all the time too. You told me, no one can hurt you unless you let them. Mm-hmm. And that was a big one for me too, of just the ways, in relationships or friendships or business or, things shift and change. And sometimes we can feel so much pain that we think is from someone else. Like you kind of gave me freedom, in times of, for me, it was sometimes things with work or whatever it was. You gave me this kind of freedom of like, you don't have to let that be your truth. Will you talk about that?
Sure.
Yeah.
There's several things there that are really groovy.
Yeah.
Some really good stuff. One is the only meaning, this is a hard one, but it's a foundational statement, and you take some adjustment to bring it in and have it be real in your life. But here it is. The only meaning anything has is the meaning you give it. That's it.
Period.
Yeah. That's the whole open the book, close the book. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's a tough one, to integrate because it's sort of goes across everything. We in exactly the sort of thing you're talking about. Somebody disappoints you, somebody upset you, somebody steals from you, somebody doesn't keep their agreements, whatever.
Right.
And all of those things, we're kind of conditioned to have expectations that people are going to do what they agree to do, that people are going to treat us well, and all these kind of civilized things that we put out there. And so often they're only a part of what happens.
Right.
So
disappointment and there's misunderstanding and there's betrayal and there's disagreement.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the question in my mind is, that happens, am I going to let that person and his activity or her activity that sort of hurt me, I acknowledge it hurt me, and now I'm going to go on because I'm not going to let that person ruin my day or my week or my life or my career.
Yeah.
I'm fine. I'm sorry that person felt it not necessary to break an agreement or to attack me or do whatever. I'm sorry that happened, and I'm sure they're going to have to deal with it in whatever way. But I want to brush it off because it's not me. It's just what happened out there, and I'm still who I am, and I still have all the same opportunities I had this morning. That sort of thing.
Right. It's important because we can grind on stuff.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
And when we do that, whether it's from like heartbreak or resentments or I mean that I know like the fastest way to like stop creative flow is to be in that space. It just doesn't work, like we can't get
it
to
doesn't
it doesn't work.
Right. Yeah, that's really right. Yeah.
So tell us, I love your stories about how you got to this place of doing this work. Like you've done a lot of interest, you've helped people in all kinds of ways. And I'd love for you to just remind me of some of those stories. Back in Texas, I know there's some.
Oh yeah, well, okay. So I think you're referring to there is that I spent 9 years in Texas, but while I was there, I put several things together, and I ended up, I'd be happy to share with you the details of this one, but for the sake of brevity, I started my practice in Dallas, Texas in 1989 or 90, something like that. I was 48 or 9 years old.
Okay.
It took me that long to find this and get to work.
That's an important point that we'll come back to, because
okay, good.
People sometimes think that it's too late for them, or like, and you started a brand new career that I think was always in your heart, in your late 40s. So we'll come back to that.
It's probably safe to say 50 or,
Yeah.
So anywhere right in there somewhere, I was assisting in a training of some people we had like 50 people in a training session. And within that group, there were people that turned out were all gay, and they came in as a community or as a group of friends of 11 or 12 of them in this group. And they supported each other and going through some pretty rigorous training. When it was over, one of those people came to me and said, "We're going to start an AIDS clinic. We're going to start an alternative AIDS clinic." Now, in 1989 or 90, whichever that was, there wasn't a lot known about AIDS, and and it was terrifying everybody because people were dying all over the place. Nobody knew quite what caused it. Nobody knew quite how you'd acquire it. It was pretty clear that it had a lot to do with lifestyle, but so what? Does that mean I can't touch a person who has a different lifestyle than me?
Yeah.
Can I be in the same room? Is it safe? Really none of that stuff was known.
Yeah.
Or at least it wasn't popularly known. So they said, we're going to start this alternative AIDS clinic, and we would like you to join us. They said that to me. And we were convinced part of what they were learning was that your physical health has a great deal to do with your mental health. And in point of fact, sidebar here, just recently reading a book, Your Brain on Art. Gorgeous book.
Oh, I already love it. It's the title alone. I'm in.
Yeah,
I'm in.
It's all about your neurology and what happens with you when you expose yourself even as just an observer of art.
Yeah.
But anyway, within there's a point is made that says somewhere between 60 and 90% of visits to medical facilities, medical visits, are from issues that are stress based. So there's some contemporary stuff that wasn't that well known in 1990, but we knew something like that was happening. These guys asked me, scared the hell out of me. I don't know that I can do that because I've got a wife, I got kids, and I don't know that I can expose my family to that. But I don't understand it very well. But I have a stepbrother who's a doc. Let me ask my stepbrother what he thinks. And if he thinks it's safe, I'll do it. So the person I'm talking to says, well, you see Bob over there that's been in this group with you've been working with for 7 months? He's an endocrinologist. Why don't you ask him?
Yeah.
So I did ask him, and Bob and I then ended up starting the first alternative AIDS clinic in Dallas, Texas. And we managed to do that for a couple of years, maybe a little less than that. And during that time, it was pretty difficult. And because we were dealing with almost entirely men, but men who were dying on a regular basis. And at the end of it, when we finally gave it up, somebody said, I didn't see this, but someone remarked in our conversation, we're going to one funeral a week for people that we know and care about. That was like
devastating.
That was it. And I moved to Sedona, Arizona, and decided I'd go get into some real alternative stuff and see what happens.
Well, I remember I think that was kind of the first part of your career where you started noticing or learning or seeing up close that what could happen when someone's emotional state shifted, even as they're facing death.
Yeah, that was a big learning, and I thank you for bringing it up or for mentioning it, because even on the last day of your life, guess what? It's still a day of your life.
Yeah,
it is still life. It's still that gift that we talked about a few minutes ago, and it's still possible to find in there this extraordinary joy of just being aware of your life. And I have seen people do that, and it just blows your mind. Because it's this extraordinary hopeful thing that for me, I'm extraordinarily hopeful when I have seen someone in that state, because I began to realize that life doesn't stop. What stops is the human body, but life, you're not your body. That's what I learned in that. I'm not my body. My body has a terminus out here somewhere, but life, which is what I am, life continues. Life doesn't die. Life doesn't die. It's like the old thing you learned in grade school science. Energy cannot be destroyed. Energy, it can only change form.
Right.
That's us.
That's us.
You're an energy being, so am I.
Yeah.
I'm going to go for a form that I think is terrific next time. I don't know what that is yet.
Yeah. So, but it being in that environment where there was so much heartbreak and sadness and death, I can imagine that the people around you that you were helping were really desperate for some kind of answers or some kind of, like, I just know we grasp when things feel so uncertain and unfair. And
oh yeah, it's absolutely true. And your point is well made. Yeah, that's the way it is for a lot of people. And for my part in this little clinic that I'm talking about, that's even not quite, wasn't even quite a clinic. It was just, that's what we were doing.
Yeah.
For my part of that was to help people through that stuff.
Yeah.
Find ways to do it. And it all has to do with some basic, I should tell you, you already know this, I think, but at the same time, I was becoming, I spent about the same period of time, a year or so, as a unity minister to inmates at the Fort Worth Federal Correction Institute, which is the Fort Worth Federal Penitentiary. So I was seeing those guys too. But that was in a totally different perspective. For there, none of those people were dying in that time that I knew them. But they were confronting correction. They were confronting whether or not they were going to continue this lifestyle. Well, I was very well acquainted with that lifestyle from much, much earlier in my life. We don't need to go into those details, but I'd visited friends or people I knew in prison as a young person, and I had an idea about, I'd seen them come out and grow. So that all happened earlier in my life. So I knew that in this institute that I knew that people could do that. And it was up to me to help them see that and help them figure out how.
And do you think that, I mean, I'm imagining that was, an opportunity for you to learn the concept we talked about at the beginning, which is that you can fall in love in order to reflect the love for themselves.
I will have to tell you that was really tough in that environment with some of those people, because love was the thing they were terrified of. Love scared them more than anything.
Really?
Yeah. What if I allow myself to feel love? I'll be exposed to all the terrible things that can happen.
Yeah.
If I stay locked up and tight, I'm at least think I'm protected from all these things that I'm actually attracting. But I don't think I'm attracting. I think I'm protecting myself from.
Wow. I mean, it's so many beautiful life lessons in again, in kind of in packages that feel or like environments that feel like a hopelessness.
Yeah.
And there's so much you could bring out. That's really beautiful.
It is. And I my task at 84 is to love it all.
Right.
Still at it. I haven't got there yet, but I'm working on it, and I think I'm a lot closer than I was in this period of time that we're talking about.
Yeah.
But it put me in a course of dealing with death and dying as a regular feature, and that was a part of that became the focus, probably, or the dominant part of my practice for the next several years. After the penitentiary and the AIDS stuff is all about what's, the very bottom of negativity in life for people. So that was a tough training for me.
Yeah.
And yet it put me in a place of, it was gorgeous, privileged learning place.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you took that and went on to continue. I mean, I know you're a lifelong learner. So you went on to continue to study different ways that you can help people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. I'm still doing it.
Still doing it.
Yeah. I should tell you again about this book. Your brain on art.
Yeah. Tell me. I love it.
It's the same thing. It's about you as a dancer. It talks about what happens in your neurology and what that does to your body when you expose yourself as a viewer of dance, or as a person who's practicing it. What happens for you, and why does that bring you such joy?
Right.
And it's a beautiful book, and it's a lovely thing to be trying to learn from. There's a lot of, it's pretty dense. The front half of that book is pretty dense because it talks a lot about neurological connections and there's different physiological stuff that's going on in the body, which is not my, that's not my skill set. So for me, it's rough sledding through the first half.
Yes, that would be for me too. Yeah. Yeah.
But it gets that gets handled, and then it gets into stuff that's a lot easier to deal with. And it's just a gorgeous book. And by the way, the book is done by two women, Ivy and, oh gosh, what's her name? Anyway, two of them. One of them is the chief design person for Google for new products. And the other one is a big deal at Johns Hopkins.
Okay.
One or both of them. It's hard. I don't know them well. It's my first exposure to these names.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
One of them is listed number 7 in some list of the world's 100 most important women. These ladies know what the hell they're doing. Yeah. This is a powerful pair, and the book is marvelous. I think they'll really like it.
I think it's interesting that, I mean, first of all, I love the title, but I also think it's interesting that they put so much value on something that I know is deeply important to us, which is creativity. And so let's talk about creativity, because we talk about that a lot. Like, so, one thing I have brought up to you before is just like, I want to write this darn book, and just how difficult it's been sometimes to find creative flow. And I know, you have played the piano, you play with music, you play with all different ways to tap into your creativity. Let's talk about that.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think that's really important stuff for everybody. I think I think it is your nature to be creative. In point of fact, I think you cannot live and not be creative.
Right.
Metaphysically, if we can go there for a moment.
Yeah, let's go there.
Okay. Metaphysically, you are a creator. That's what you do. You're creating the experiences that you have in your life. Everything that you experience is a result of your own creativity. And we can go into that further if you want or not. But the point is that I'm trying to make is that it's just your nature. Everybody needs to be creative in some way. Then some of us find ways that are more obviously creative, obvious to
society or
yeah. And others are just being creative about figuring out, I've got this great idea I'm going to do about how I can reimagine my tool shed and make it into something, and that becomes that person, really important and significant. But they have to do something. So I mean, even if it says, how am I going to create a decent meal for dinner? How am I going to keep the pool clean? How am I,
right, whatever it is.
Whatever it is, yeah, you are creating an experience, and that's true. That becomes, if you just that reduces to you're creating all of it. You're just creating all of it. That's all. And nothing happens to you that you don't attract to yourself. Nothing in your life. There's no such thing as coincidence. There are no accidents. It's all about you created it all. That's the metaphysics of it. A little hard to swallow all of that.
And you've told me that too. Like sometimes I'll say like, well, I'm so lucky that this happened. And then you say like, you're not lucky. You made that happen.
That's right.
And I love that.
It's true. Yeah. Don't blame it on luck. Blame it on your own hard work or your own creativity. That's really it.
What happens when people insist, which I have definitely heard and felt before, when people insist that they're not creative? They have to find it. It's up to them.
You can be as stubborn as you want, but
right.
That's about all I can say to that. Nobody has come to me and said, I don't believe I'm creative and I want you to fix it. So
yeah,
I haven't quite dealt with that, so I don't have a reference in my own experience for it. But surely I have had people in life who are not going to change, and it doesn't matter who they talk to or what the conversation is. And
what I've been stunned at is like people that think that they're not creative, like even your example of the tool shed, like people that think that they're not doing something creative until like when you understand like their process and how it invigorates them and how it energizes them and the state of flow that they go into, you're like, oh, you're plenty creative. Well, it's happening. It's happening.
And as I said earlier, in these conversations, I learned from you too, like I just did in this moment. Thank you for
I almost said I feel so lucky, but then you would say, you made that happen.
Don't say that.
Yeah. Well, I do. It's interesting though. And I'll, again, we meet for coffee once a month. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I feel like I'm kind of like holding some of my insecurities back all month until I can come to you and say like, Malcolm, I don't know what I'm doing. And I don't know how to write this book. I don't know how to run this business. I don't know how to, be the kind of parent I want to be. I don't, I can get like everybody pretty insecure,
sure.
And I just feel like you have really helped me kind of like, just, I don't know, when we fall off center in that way, you kind of help me find my way back on the beam.
Thank you. I appreciate hearing that. It makes me feel good. Yeah. Thanks for that. That was a nice gift.
Well, and let's talk about that because everybody, I think, and one of the biggest lessons I've learned in the Highbury in the last 10 years is that the people that I think couldn't possibly feel insecure, where I'm like, oh, she has it nailed. Like she is like, all the things. She's like, crushing it. She went to the best school. She's the smartest. She's the most talented. She's the most creative. She's just ruling the world. And then you're like, oh my gosh, even her. Mm-hmm. There's just like, I don't think any of us get out of it alive in terms of.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just part of life. There's everybody's cup is full. That's just the way it is. Yeah. And we all move to that point where our challenges are so much that we feel like we can't possibly do them, which means, boy, we're at a great place of learning. This is it.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
yes.
And we may or may not learn, lots of stuff doesn't happen there's lots of stuff we don't learn in a single life. But
yeah.
My Tibetan Buddhist friends would say, maybe you get it in your 16th or your 300th life.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, what would you say? I'll use the words because I kind of have to. I'm going to rebel for a second.
Go ahead,
I feel so lucky that I get to have coffee with you once a month and we have these conversations. But for people that are watching or listening that feel like they can't find that part of themselves, they can't I think what happens a lot of times is people know they want their lives to be different.
Yeah.
And they don't know how to get there. They know that there's like a gap between where they feel they are now and where they had envisioned or hoped or wanted to be, and how they wanted to feel, not just achievement wise, but feeling like you're doing feeling like you're doing something meaningful and that matters and that you're helping people.
I think meaningful is really important. I do think it's important that you feel like you're doing something meaningful. I think that the grind that you mentioned earlier and the kind of part of life, if you get stuck in this where you've got a career going, you invested years or time in learning and being able to execute it, and then find that you don't like it. What the hell am I doing here? I don't love myself. I don't love my life, and I'm stuck. I don't know what to do about it. Once more, we're back to the person that we started this conversation about. That's a person who needs to do some work about how they're seeing themselves vis-a-vis the world, and they're missing entirely their own creativity. They're missing all that beautiful stuff, and they just get, your view gets slugged down. It's important to note that the glass is half full or the glass is half empty. That
right
metaphor. So for most people, the glass is half empty. For most people, you look for what's wrong. For most people, you look for what's
missing or what's
Well, it's because we're hardwired to look for threat. It's in the DNA of the human being that allowed the human being to go, to evolve and get and survive to a point where now it's kind of doesn't really work on our behalf. But it kept us as a species evolving and living. So now there's a little more emphasis on looking for what's wrong, looking for what's a threat, looking for what doesn't work, looking for all that stuff. And then you made a reference to the microcosm and the macrocosm in those notes that you gave me earlier. But that threat and perceiving the world through that and not doing anything to fix it then becomes a macrocosm, and it becomes the larger reality that we all live in, and we're experiencing that today in our politics and in international affairs, all that stuff. Even in, where people are paying attention to their fears rather than to their possibilities.
Right.
In my own opinion, just the world according to Malcolm. In my own opinion, that's a result of having stopped doing arts and creative stuff in schools for children who have now grown up to be these fearful people. I think that the arts that, that when I was in high school, the several high schools that I went to, all of them had choir. They had boys choir, girls choir, mixed choir. They had band. They had orchestra. They had
square dancing, even.
Right. And art, several kinds of art, all of that stuff going on within a high school. In crappy little mining town in Utah that I was in, they had all of that. You don't see that in schools now. That's all been jettisoned from the general curricula around the world, around the country.
There's certainly not as much access or emphasis.
Right, it's not a part of the regular school for younger children. Well, at any rate, so I think that's what provides an education where they're not taught to look for what's beautiful. They're not taught to look for how can I participate in what's lovely. And I think it's that participation in what's beautiful and what's lovely that we all are really hoping for, looking for, but not trusting because something might be happening over there. And it's about focus.
Yes, it really is. And one thing I will start by saying is that when the world feels so painful and divided and heartbroken, it's sometimes, it can be tempting or easy to feel hopeless.
Yeah.
And to feel like, what could my role, like, what do my actions even matter? Like me and like this little life, I'm a little speck on the planet. But what I find so hopeful about what you're saying is that when we are willing to be inspired and be open and in creative flow, we're like opening our perspectives, but we're also opening our capacity. Like,
absolutely. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Plus, when we're doing that, the person that next to you feels it, and that person might start moving that direction too. There's a ripple effect that goes out from you. And
yes.
And that thing you're raising up, well, I'm just one person. What can one person do? Well, get rid of that, because one person could change the world,
Yes.
But you have to be willing to do that.
You have to be willing. Yeah. And it's also like, I think you have to be okay with not knowing exactly what your impact is. Like, I was telling a story the other day that I went to my high school reunion, and it was like my 30-year high school reunion. And that was last year. And I ran into a woman who I knew in high school, but not well. We didn't really hang out in high school. I went to a big high school. I knew of her. We were kind of like in probably like overlapping little friend groups or whatever you call them. So I knew her, but I didn't know her well. And I never stayed in touch with her. And when I was leaving the reunion, she said to me, I just want you to know how much you have helped me and changed my life with the Hivery and with what you post on social media. And when I was hurting and when I was grief-stricken, you were sharing. And I was stunned, because here, what you realize is that you have no idea how you're impacting people. You have no idea who's listening. You have no idea who you're helping. And maybe it's none of our business. Maybe we're not supposed to know. Yeah. Maybe we're not supposed to know. But I just thought it was such a lesson for me of like,
that's lovely. That's a really nice piece. Yeah. Because especially for you, because while we're talking, you focus this conversation on me and what I do, but I'm certain of the fact that you've helped a lot more people than I have. I'm certain of the fact that your impact has had a broader ripple effect than mine has, because I know that you attract and go to the trouble of finding ways to train and help and teach and mentor and push and cajole numbers
and
of
love,
people.
like you.
I know that's true. Love. Yeah, I know that's true. And my admiration for you is no less than yours for me. I assure you.
Well, I think but it's all kind of part of the same of what we're talking about, because your words and encouragement and love have given me energy at times where I didn't think I had any to spare. And then I go forth and put it out in the world. It's the same. It's all,
Yeah, I think that's really good. I think that's a really important observation. Yeah, because it's not, I have one friend who said, love is a verb. And I read just recently, who was it? Famous person. Anyway, said something. I'm beginning to understand that I'm just a verb. Like I'm a verb. That's what I am.
Just living, being, just breathing.
Yeah, that's a verb. I'm a being. I'm busy being. I'm a verb. That's what I am. I'm not a do or a thing. I'm a verb.
Well, and I mean, I know, like, when I feel the worst about myself is when I'm thinking of all the things I need to do. When I feel the best about myself is when I'm just being me, being. So I don't know if I could agree with that more.
Yeah, me too.
Because me and a to-do list are not friends. That can make me feel inadequate and overwhelmed, and of course we have stuff to do, right? We need to do stuff.
But you're a beautifully organized person. I say that, and I know all this stuff you manage to keep track of, and I think I would positively die under that load. I wouldn't be able to carry it at all.
Well, but I think what it is we can be hard on ourselves for not doing it all and not completing and not crossing all those things off the to-do list and feeling overwhelmed when we look and we're like, I don't know what to do. I know I want to help people, but I don't know how. and then we get into that like list mode of like, well, I need a website and I need I
boy,
go back to school and I might be too old for that, or I might be too young for that. Like and that's all doing, right?
It is all doing. And I've certainly been and done all of that stuff. I've been in that doing mess myself. My website needs to be reworked.
Yeah.
Anyway, I need to do stuff. I got to do stuff to make things happen. But you're so right. I'm not a human doing. I'm a human being.
Yeah.
And it's when I'm focused on who I really am that I feel, best.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I am managing to be there most of the time these days.
I love that. Yeah. And I so enjoy watching and experiencing things with you of like, at 84, you have so much energy for continuing to help people and to be there for people. And I think it keeps you young.
I do too. I think so. That this Blue Zone book that you talked about.
Yeah.
That where people live these extended lives. One of those groups talked about that it's necessary to continue to work. You have to have meaningful occupation of some kind. It doesn't have to be a job, but you do have to be busy at something that's meaningful to you. And I think that's I was fortunate. It took me until I was nearly 50 to find it, but I found a place in life where I can have that. I have meaningful work, and I have work that gives me great joy, and occasionally I get to see that because of the work that I do, someone else experiences great joy, which just puts me into a state of awe.
Yes.
And I know that you know what I'm talking about.
I do know what you're talking about. And it's, and it doesn't have to be like, I think sometimes the block for people is that in order to do work they love, they'd have to quit their day job. They'd have to win the lottery. They'd have to like we kind of make these ideas of like, that's not available to me.
Yeah.
But there's so many ways within, various structures and constrictions of life that we can bring kind of our magic sauce out.
Sure. Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be the full-time job. It can be something that we even do, just out of love on the side on Tuesdays at 7 or whatever, it's just that feeling of like, I'm contributing in a way that feels really true.
Related to that, it's tangential a bit, but it is related to that is the whole idea. So it's a cultural thing again. And the whole idea is if I do something, if I get something done, if I get my garage cleaned, if I get my house cleaned, if I get, my bills paid, if I get the vacation in Tahiti, if I get this stuff, if I get my stuff, then I can feel good.
Right.
And feeling good then becomes dependent upon something that you do.
Here we go again.
So so that what I try to help people see is all that stuff is okay, but those things, those tasks that you've put yourself, what happens if you decide you're going to feel good anyway? Just choose to feel good and take it out of the realm of it has to be a transaction. You have to get something done over there in order to have it. It's not true. You don't. You can actually choose to feel good. You can begin to manage your own emotional state and choose to feel good. And then look what happens to all these things that you think you have to do. They all get done in a much better way anyway.
It's true.
Yeah, the results that you are able to achieve are better than the ones you achieve when you're going, well, if I only get this done, I get to have a beer or whatever,
Right.
Have the beer and feel good and then do it.
Right. Or I think we've been taught that these like milestones are what make us happy. Like like you said, like it's like when I get to that job, when I get to take that trip, when I marry that guy, when I buy that house, like, and then we learn that all those things, like they keep moving the goalposts.
Yeah, you're so right. That's so right. It keeps moving. Yeah. You buy that boat and you go, that was the best day of my life. And the day I bought a boat. And then I find, oh, look, I need a bigger boat.
Right.
Right. What happened? There goes a 50-footer. Damn, I'd like to have that boat. And then in the boating community, the joke is the best day of your life is the day you buy your first boat. And the second best day of life is the day you get rid of it.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah, all that conditional stuff.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, totally.
I'm grateful that you and I live in a place where it's easy have these, to maintain these perspectives and to have them work in our lives. I know there are lots of places in the world where it's not easy, where we're making those kinds of adjustments in your thinking requires a lot more effort than it does here.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
And I need to acknowledge that that's true out there. And I know you do too.
Yes, 100%.
But out of that, what happens for me, and I know that it's true for you as well, is that I have this enormous gratitude for being able to live where we do in the circumstances that we have.
I totally agree. And I think it also comes with responsibility. Like if we, you know, to live in a place where we are safe and we have stability and we have food and water and housing and the basics, there is a responsibility, I think, in owning that that privileged place of life, and that I feel that it makes it that much more important that we put ourselves out there. We put our work or our expression or our creativity or our love or our service, or I feel like we have to do that.
That's you describing you, all right.
It's how I feel.
I know. Yeah.
I'm like, I don't take it lightly.
You don't.
And another reason I don't take it lightly is because when you've been up close to a lot of people you love whose lives have been cut short for all kinds of reasons.
Yeah.
I take it very seriously. I take it very
What's the it that you take very seriously?
Life.
Yeah, good.
Life and how we choose joy, how we choose love, how we choose our days. We can spend our days looking at that other guy's boat, or we can spend our days immersed in our own creativity, capacity, love, expression. I just know, I know for certain, and I don't know much for certain, but I know for certain that we can have a more substantial impact in ways that we can't even imagine if we live in that zone.
This is you. This is that magnificent being called Grace, and the meaning that she has created for her life. The only meaning anything has is the meaning you give it. This is the meaning you've created in your life. I think it's extraordinary. I think you're magnificent in doing that. I just adore you. And that's a big part of why, because of what I think this high moral value that you've placed on what you do and how important it is. And I hope I share that same kind of perspective.
Yes. I think that's why we have such beautiful conversations.
It may indeed be. Yeah. Yeah, it is. I just think every time I have a client and we get some kind of a little breakthrough, and I've had a whole bunch of clients, and I've had that opportunity numbers and numbers and numbers of times. When that happens, I just get this. I just feel this extraordinary privilege to be that person in connecting with that person in that event.
Yeah.
And that place of privilege is one that I hold in this sort of, now I'm kind of in the same arena you're in. I hold as being really responsible. I have a great deal of responsibility in that to manage what I know correctly, so that this person and I are able to achieve what this person wants to achieve. And then I can tell him, I'm just the tour guide. You did all the work.
Right.
But I'm not saying yet to him, it's really important how you do the tour.
Yeah.
So it's a win for both of us. I get as much out of that work as my clients do. And again, that responsibility thing it's a lovely, beautiful gift to have that responsibility.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And to take it seriously and to not take it for granted.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I don't take a moment of it for granted. And even, as you very much know, because I shared with you everything, even when things are so hard, running a business like the Hivery, where the whole point of the business was to be connected, shoulder to shoulder in person, hugging and kind and sharing, and the pandemic was the opposite of that. So yes, even when things were so dismantled, and things about my business were they really did not go well.
I know,
Did not go according to
years.
plan. It was a tough couple of years.
Yeah.
But I think that the reason I still do this and the reason I am still here is because of that, like that commitment. There's a tenacity in that where I was like, I want to serve, and I know
it's the way you can do that.
This is how I can do it.
Yeah.
And it's like there were a lot of obstacles for all of us. And I think we have to decide, like, you know, one of someone that I've been lucky enough to interview as well, Lynn Twist, who
Lynn Twist,
yes, she wrote that book, Living a Committed Life. And it's what we're talking about. It's like this choice. There is a bit of choice in what, you know, what we commit to.
It's all choice.
It's all choice. Yeah. And who we want to be versus do.
Yeah. And that's, you know, I love that there, one of these teachers that I have said, you know, there are no minor events in your life. In every single thing that you do, the question that you might ask yourself is this the person I want to be? Is this the person I want to be? Am I doing the thing that allows me to be the person I want to be? That's the question. Isn't that
what I love about these things is that they're so simple and yet so, like, sometimes so distant or far away. Like we have to go grasp them, and we have to go get and say, like, get back over here and give you that lesson. Like, you know, because it's that's so profound and perfect.
It is. It's really a beautiful statement.
Yeah. And in so many ways, like, is this the person I want to be and how I help people in the world? Is this the person I want to be and how I love myself? Is this the person I want to be and how I love others? Is this the person I want to be, you know, even in like creative fuel? Like if I know that I operate better when I put creativity into my life, is this the person I want to be who either starves myself of it or gets in there and like starts painting, even though I don't know what the painting's going to look like.
Yeah, right. Well, it's still life. It's still, there's still difficulty and ease both, you know.
It's all of it.
Yeah,
like you said.
I love it all.
Yeah,
boy, this is a big job.
Big job. It's a big job.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I went to a music show the other night. This woman, she is so amazing. Oh my God. Maggie Rose is her name, and she's a best name ever, right?
Yeah, it is a great name. Yeah.
She's a singer-songwriter who lives in Nashville, and I was lucky enough to see her in my hometown. But when I was watching her, and she's so talented, but I was watching her and thinking, you know, it's so good for us to see artists like leave it all on the floor kind of thing, you know, because it's such a reminder of, like, we have these choices that we make of, like, we're either going to leave it all on the floor or we're going to stay in bed with the covers over our head and hide it and, you know, not express it and I was watching her going, like, I don't think I realized until recently how much it's helpful. Like I watched her and went, like, I'm going to write that book. I'm going to use my voice. I'm going to say what's true. I'm going to, like, you know, again, it's that idea of, like, she has no idea. Well, she does now because hopefully she's listening. But you know,
she didn't until you told her.
She didn't until I told her. Just what an influence.
How she fueled your own creativity. Yeah. And we do that.
And we do that.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm glad you made it. Yeah.
And it reminds me too of, you know, Julia Cameron, who wrote that book, The Artist's Way, who reminds us to go on artist dates, and dates with ourselves. Where and it doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be like, go walk on the trail and touch the tree and reconnect and come back and, like, and there's some consciousness in that.
There is. Yeah. There's so much, and there's so much. There are so many people teaching us essentially that same thing. If we just pay attention, Julia Cameron that's a beautiful piece of work, that book. And you find these two women I was talking about who authored Your Brain on Art are telling you the same thing.
Right.
You know? And the Japanese people from the blue zones. Who came up with forest bathing. Just go be in a forest and let it give you what it wants to give you, you know. That stuff is everywhere. If you're willing to be open to finding it, that's really the whole thing. We're getting kind of, we're getting pretty broad in our conversation. I want to wrap something up that I think is really important about.
Okay.
And that is, I think that the single most functionally important thing you can do is to pay attention to your focus. That it's all about your focus of attention. Mm-hmm. And that when you focus your attention on those things that give you joy, that give you pleasure, that make you connected to other people, that they all enlarge who you are.
Right.
You become larger, you grow and it is literally a growth experience. You go through an experience of becoming bigger than you were when you pay attention to those things. And when you focus your attention on what's wrong, what happens is you reduce who you are. You become less significant, less important, less powerful, less able, less capable, less of who you are.
Yeah.
So the important thing in our whole conversation, I think that maybe I'm overstating it, but the single most important thing to pay attention to is, what are you paying attention to?
I don't think you're overstating it, because we're all looking for answers, right? Like answers of like, how to get from here to there, how to live with purpose, how to find meaning, how to feel satisfied, how to be happy. And it's right there.
Yeah, it is.
It's right in what you pay attention to.
Yeah. And the first thing to pay attention to is how you feel. Nothing matters. Nothing is more important. Nothing is equally significant to how you feel.
Yeah. And we have capacity inside to tend to that.
Yeah. And I think that's our inner guide, our connectedness to the larger self, or to the collective consciousness, or the whatever, however you want to put that. But for me, I like the idea of just your larger self, because then it avoids all that other stuff.
Right.
But that part of you that knows more than your conscious mind knows, that part of you that does all these things that keeps you alive, you can't even keep track of what they are. That great book that I've been talking about is still trying to figure all that out. Right. These great neurology people.
Right.
It's just, I think that's the end of the point right there.
Wait, do you know what it reminds me of? It's kind of a funny metaphor. It reminds me, because I started out, when I was like 3 or 4 years old, I started in ballet lessons, and I loved ballet class. I wanted to be a ballerina, since the moment I knew the word.
Oh yeah.
And so I studied ballet for decades. Mm-hmm. And I remember for years and years and years, every teacher I had, and my dad was in the Air Force, so we moved a lot. So I was always changing towns and always changing dance schools and always trying to find a new teacher. And that was back when you had to use the yellow pages for that. And so I would typically choose my dance school based on the yellow page ad that I found, and try to figure out who would be the best teacher from the yellow pages. But so all these different teachers would tell me again and again and again to pull up. They meant like pull up from like, I didn't know what they meant was the problem. So they would tell me to pull up for decades. Mm-hmm. Pull up, Grace. It was always this correction, pull up. And I'd like suck my stomach in and try to pull up and like try to be taller. And I'd be so uncomfortable. And I'm like, I'm pulling up, but I don't like pull up where. And then I had a teacher, her name is Cecilia. I met her when I was 22 or 23. I'd been dancing for a long time. And she didn't tell me to pull up. She said, connect your lower abdominal to your lower back and keep that connection and breathe out. And what she was saying was like, it's basically like what we call now, which is like engaging your core, and like using your core, not for like vanity muscle purposes, using your core because it's the center of your body. So it gives you balance. It gives you, it gives you strength. Mm-hmm. And when you have that core, when you have that strength from the center of your body, you have so much more capacity for movement. You can turn faster. You can leap bigger. You can do all the things, right? But I just remember being like, okay, for decades, someone told me to pull up and I didn't know what they meant by that. And then finally someone says it to me a different way and it changed my dancing.
Yeah.
And life is like that too.
It is. Okay.
Where we're just looking and looking and looking for answers, and people are saying these things in all these different ways. It's kind of like what you're saying with this book of like, there's all these different ways that we are looking for the answers that we're seeking and looking for like our kind of this path or this guide. And finally someone says it to us in a different way. I'm like, oh, that's it.
That's so great.
That's it.
Yeah. And I think there's all kinds of ways to frame that. But one of them is, when you're ready, the teacher appears,
Yes.
Finally, you're at a place where you could hear that in a way that was meaningful for you just because she changed the verbiage to get you there,
Yes.
And I think that both of those perspectives are really wonderful. And I love the way you've told me this story before, and I love the way that you got this clarity. It was sort of this epiphany of understanding, and as you say, it changed your dancing. It was a great thing.
But it's been such a lesson for me in life of like, sometimes I hear this with the Hivery where people will say like, well, I don't want to start that business or write that book because someone's already done it. It's like, well, no one's going to do it like you. And no one's going to do it with your, perspective or grief or joy or pain or brilliance or whatever, right. No one's going to do it like you. And we don't know how the slightly different way that you teach us a lesson is going to connect with someone.
Oh, that was just right? So beautifully put. What a great way of saying all that. That's right. Yeah.
I get so excited about that. I think that's why I do it, because I just believe in it so much, of like this unique potential that's in all of us that's like can't be replicated. I think that's why we're such good friends. Yeah. I think you believe in that too.
I do indeed. Yeah, absolutely. There's this uniqueness to each of us that, there's never in the whole history of the universe been either one of us. We are the first and only time this event will occur. And it's like, that just drags in all kinds of energy and makes you want to do stuff.
What a gift a gift.
Yeah, so. It is a gift. And I think that you and I are able to see that. And I think that is a real base, again, one of those bases that our friendship is based on.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think so too. Well, I love our friendship, and I'm so grateful for our conversations and that we get to share this conversation.
This is really wonderful. I'm glad you arranged all of this. How's our time?
I think that's a wrap.
I think so.
I just adore you, and I'm so thankful that you're willing to do this with me. So thank you, Malcolm. Mwah. Yes.
This is one of the great privileges of my life, is to have you as my friend.
Well, likewise, I feel the same way. I hope you found this episode helpful, idea-provoking, and inspiring, especially if you're in the midst of creating or clarifying your next chapter. I can't even put into words how much I appreciate you, your vulnerability, your stories of creating a life and meaningful work amidst adversity, grief, ever-changing and challenging times, and of course, life's peaks and uncertain valleys. You are seekers, wisdom sharers, and artists of life, and together we can build meaningful next chapters that feel aligned with who we really are, what we're put on this earth to do, and how we can make a difference one human being at a time. Please subscribe on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And I would love it if you could leave a review for the art of what's next. If you know someone who wants to create a new chapter or who would appreciate this episode, please share it with them. You can text it to them or email them the link or post about the show on your Instagram. If you want more help in creating your own meaningful next chapter, join the Hivery newsletter to get inspiration, stories, and resources to help you create your next chapter like an artist. Sign up at thehivery.com/podcast or at the link in the show notes.